Hello everyone. This is a video lesson of the short chapter Conservation of Natural Resources. So I believe you all already know what is meant by conservation. You may have studied environmental studies in school. So there isn't much for me to explain in this short chapter. So let us take a look at the chapter. Conservation is usually defined as careful preservation and protection of something. That is a definition given in Merriam-Webster dictionary. So what is given in brackets is the source from where what is given in between quotes is taken. So here the definition which is given in quotes, careful preservation and protection of something, that is taken from Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is the source. So the sources are given in brackets. It might be a book or a website, a web page, whatever. So conservation is careful preservation and protection of something. You preserve a living thing or a species from going extinct. In terms of natural resources and biodiversity, conservation refers to the practices undertaken to nurture and preserve them so that the diversity of life forms is preserved for the future. So why do you need to conserve or preserve living things and natural resources? So that they will remain, natural resources will remain for the future generations. So what we need is sustainable resources, sustainable development, so that whatever is used by us today will not run out, will not finish. Coal is a bad example of sustainable development. Coal mining coal will only reduce coal in the earth's crust. It will finish, it will end. It is not going to be replenished for millions of years. So that is not, mining is not sustainable development. Whereas solar energy, using and utilizing solar energy is sustainable use of natural resource. Why? Because the sun, you can use it as much as you want, because the sun will always be there. When it comes to natural resources, minimizing the use and reducing waste is the golden rule. This is especially true of non-renewable resources such as fossil fuels. We already talked about coal, which is again a non-renewable resource. Once you take it, it will take lots and lots of years for it to be replenished. So like that, fossil fuels, like the fuels that we use today, they are also non-renewable resources. You cannot renew them in the near future. So what we have to do is stop depending on non-renewable resources, at least reduce, minimize the use of these resources. Development should not be detrimental to conservation. So development should not endanger. Detrimental means putting something in danger. So development should not be detrimental to conservation. It should not harm other species. Sustainable development is the new mantra that is being exhorted by activists and organizations. Sustainable development, we already discussed sustainability without causing harm to any living species, without causing harm to any of the elements like air, water, earth, etc., and without using up resources, leaving resources for future generations. That is how development becomes sustainable. So that is a new mantra. Sustainable development is a new mantra that is being exhorted. That is something which is encouraged by organizations conservation organizations and activists. When the environment is used for development without damaging the resources, ensuring their availability for the future, it is called sustainable development. So that this is the definition. When the environment is used for development, you can use it for development, but sustainable development means you should not damage the resources, and when you do not damage the resources, you are ensuring their availability for the future. So that makes it sustainable development. Sustainable forestry practices include leaving fallen trees to decay, recycling and choosing alternative materials like bamboo instead of wood, replacing poor farming techniques, reducing the use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides, and selective harvesting, removing individual trees or small groups of trees so that other trees will anchor and hold on to the soil, are some techniques that will sustain the quality of the soil. So, sustainable forestry practices is, some examples of sustainable forestry practices are given. Leaving trees to decay so that it will replenish the earth, it will reinvigorate the earth, so that the soil will remain healthy for other plants to grow. Then recycling and choosing alternative materials like bamboo instead of wood. So replacing wood with bamboo, so that we need not chop down trees for making all this stuff. If you can make them with bamboo, well and good. So that is another bamboo is an alternative material, something which you can use instead of instead of wood. Replacing poor farming techniques. Poor farming techniques often lead to loss of forests. Cutting down forests to make farmlands is a big threat. Then we have to replace those farming techniques. You need to educate people regarding how to farm more responsibly. Then reducing the use of chemical fertilizers. You all know that chemical fertilizers cannot be fully replaced. Okay, we have this example in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan government ordered the use of only biofertilizers. They banned people from using chemical fertilizers, and that ended in tragedy. There was severe drought in Sri Lanka very recently, and the government had to recall the decision, the new law, and they had to make use of chemical fertilizers. They started using chemical fertilizers again. Then reducing the use of pesticides and insecticides. Then selective harvesting. Selective harvesting, or here in brackets, removing individual trees or small groups of trees instead of cutting down all the trees in a single area, in an area. This is called selective logging. Now we need wood. Okay, unless we replace wood with something with an alternative like bamboo, we need wood. So even if you need wood, and even if you want to cut down trees for wood, instead of cutting down trees from an entire area, selective logging can be practiced. Logging means cutting down trees. So selective logging means cutting down trees, some trees from different areas, not just sticking to one particular place. I can show you a picture. See, this is a picture, and towards the bottom right you can see the brown area where all the trees were logged together. Okay, So now it is cleared of the forest in that particular area has been cleared. So that is not a sustainable practice. You can see the difference between unlogged forest and the logged area where all the trees have been removed. Okay, so logging means cutting down trees, and if you go further up, you can see areas where 30% of the trees have been logged. So in there, trees, selected trees are cut down. Not all trees are cut down from a single area. You cut down trees from different areas instead of clearing an area as a whole. And further up, you can see an area where 55% of the trees have been logged. So selective logging is a sustainable forestry practice. In 1988, Norman Myers had written a paper introducing the concept of biodiversity hotspots. So Norman Myers is a very famous, he was a very famous conservationist. He passed away a couple of years ago. So he was the one who introduced the concept of biodiversity hotspots. So biodiversity is not just about places or areas where you find a variety of plants and animals. So normally people think that a biodiverse area or a hotspot is a place where you find the maximum number of varieties or a lot of different varieties of plants and animals. And if when you find that kind of a place, you have to preserve them. Of course, you have to preserve such areas where different varieties of plants and animals coexist. But something else Norman Myers said is more important. He said that there are certain species which are endemic to certain smaller areas. So just because there is no big or large variety of plants and animals in a particular area doesn't mean you have to or you can go and cut down trees and make use of that land for your personal benefit. No. That particular place may not have a lot of varieties of plants and animals, but that particular place may be the only place where a certain variety of plant and animal can be found. So that again should be categorized as a hotspot. You may not find that particular species anywhere else on the planet. So hotspot is not just about finding not just a place where maximum or a lot of varieties of plants and animals are found. Hotspots are places where you may not find a lot of plants and animals, but then again there might be certain species that you find only in that particular area alone. So he was the one who introduced the concept of biodiversity hotspots. And a biodiversity hotspot is a biogeographic region that is both a significant reservoir of biodiversity. You find a significant reservoir, a collection of biodiversity, different varieties of plants and animals. And a hotspot is something which is threatened with destruction. Okay, it is under the threat of destruction. So that is why it is it is designated as a hotspot. You have to preserve it. It refers to 35 biologically rich areas around the world that have lost at least 70% of their original habitat. So these are very sensitive places, areas which are under the threat of destruction. 70% of the original habitat of these certain species have already been lost, and conserving whose species can have an enormous impact in securing our global biodiversity. So we need to conserve these species, and if you conserve our species, we can maintain the biodiversity of the earth. Okay, we can maintain and secure global biodiversity. So we should take care not to make these species extinct. We should not let them go extinct. There are 4 biodiversity hotspots in India: the Himalayas, you all know the Himalayas, Western Ghats, which is much closer to us, then the Indo-Burma region, which includes not just India, it includes countries like Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, etc. And then we have the Sundaland, which includes the Nicobar Islands, as well as places like Indonesia, etc. So these are the officially recognized 4 biodiversity hotspots in India. Business concerns, international and local organizations and governments are all involved in the efforts for preserving and conserving our environment. So there are many organizations who are interested, who have a keen interest in protecting and conserving our environment. The United Nations takes a lead role here, followed by other organizations such as World Wildlife Fund. World Wildlife Fund is now known as World Wide Fund for Nature. It was founded in 1961. It is a non-governmental organization. It is the largest conservation organization. It's a non-governmental organization. It was founded in 1961. It's headquartered in Switzerland. And another organization is the International Union for Conservation of Nature. This is a governmental organization. It's an organization of governments and then other conservation organizations, etc. It is closely associated with UNESCO. It was founded in 1948. International Union for Conservation of Nature deals more with data analysis, etc. Zoos and botanical gardens also help in preservation of life forms. Zoos, you all know what zoos are. And a botanical gardens is a plant version of a zoo, where you go and you can see a lot of plants which you may not otherwise see around you. Then so zoos and botanical gardens help in the preservation of life forms. NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and individuals can also contribute immensely to conservation by spreading awareness. So there are many non-governmental organizations functioning in India as well as outside of India. They get funds from everywhere to work towards their goal of preserving the environment. Deforestation is a major threat to the conservation of natural resources and the biodiversity of the earth. So deforestation is a major threat. A major villain when it comes to conservation. The permanent destruction of forests by cutting down or burning down trees is known as deforestation. So that is the definition of deforestation. You all are very familiar with the idea. Sometimes individuals resort to using hazardous chemicals in trees, also very often for personal benefits. So in order to kill a tree, some people use chemicals, which is again harmful not just for the tree but also for the fertility of the earth. It threatens the fertility and the vitality of the earth and the soil. The green writers and activists have always voiced their anxiety about mass destruction of trees for commercial benefits. Green writers given in quotes, means writers who writers who voice their concerns with respect to the environment. People who are pro-environmentalist writers, their literature is more or less focused on nature, its preservation, conservation, etc. So they have written a lot, and activists have also voiced their anxiety, their concern about mass destruction of trees for commercial benefits, for commercial personal benefits of people as well as certain corporate organizations.